F1 Fantasy has just released for the 2026 season. So in this video, I'm going to go through everything that you need to know for F1 Fantasy heading into the 2026 season. I'll be talking about how to find the game, how to play the game, all the changes for 2026, all of the good and bad assets to bring into your teams, and my first initial thoughts for the entire game. Now, if you are new around here, make sure to like and subscribe. I will be making content about F1 Fantasy throughout the entire season. I'll be putting up my schedule right now on a little presentation right over there. And of course, if you need a league to join the ZACHGP League. I'll be putting the league code down below. I'll be putting everything in the comments for everyone to come and join. Straight away, for everyone out there, if this is your first time playing, this is your time to pay attention for how to just find F1 Fantasy. And for everyone who has played F1 Fantasy and is familiar with all the rules, skip to the next section in the video, which I will have as a header throughout the entire section if this isn't something you need to know just for now. But straight away for F1 Fantasy, you can find it either on the F1 app or on the official F1 website. And it is as easy as that. All you need to do to be able to play F1 Fantasy, because it's completely free, is to make an F1 account. You just join, you register, you create your team, but don't worry, because the teams you create for Australia will have unlimited transfers. You can just put whatever team that you want for the start, and then you can go back and make changes all before the deadline for Australia. The deadline will be at qualifying, and that is basically as simple as it gets for actually how to find F1 Fantasy. So let's actually talk about how to play F1 Fantasy. So we'll start off with the changes heading into 2026. They have actually done a new layout for the leagues. As you can see, when you go over to the league stuff, all of this did not used to be like this. It definitely wasn't a scroll. It actually looks very nice now. And then you go over to your little leagues here. You've got the global leagues. This should get up to about 3 million-ish players. If we're lucky, you've got my league, of course, like I've mentioned. Come join that if you want. And then you've got all of the leagues that you can join below. There's so many leagues you can join, but they've just done a little bit of a revamp on how exactly that all works. However, what they've also done, which they worded it very weirdly, I wish they'd just put examples in this as well, because a lot of the time they don't really do that. But transfers have changed slightly from what we're used to. From this season, we'll only look at the total amount your team changes between Grand Prix weekends when calculating your transfer allowance, not each transfer separately. So what we believe this means is, let's say in Australia, you went George Russell and you wanted to move over to Leclerc for China. If you did that transfer earlier on in the week, if you then went, oh, actually, no, I kind of want to go back to Russell, it wouldn't incur a transfer. That is what we believe is happening right now, although it's not completely, clear on this. I wish they worded it slightly better. Again, it's one of those things I have a little bit of a pet peeve about F1 Fantasy, where they're just not very open about everything. Like, just give an example there. Also, the DNF in the sprints will be reduced to -10. It used to be -20 even in the sprint races, which does make it a little bit more comfortable to be trying these more out there team selections or the bigger chips at sprints, which is good. However, it's still -20 for DNF, so I'll get into that in the actual rules. And now, we used to have 4.5 million as the minimum budget a driver could go down to, but now it's gone down to 3 million. And trust me, some drivers will get there. I'm looking at you, Aston Martin, potentially, if they don't get their act together. But those are all the changes to 2026. Not a lot has changed. So if you do know the 2025 rules, that's why I mentioned you can skip to later in the video, because not a lot has changed. So I'll be talking about a lot of the stuff that you already know. But heading into the rules, as I mentioned, the scoring has not changed much. For qualifying, you still get 1 point for 10th all the way up to pole position, getting 10 points. I still think this is slightly too low. However, that's how qualifying has always worked. You'll get -5 if you do not set a time in qualifying. So an example of this was, I believe in 2024, Jeddah, Zhou couldn't set a time. That meant he got -5 even before the race started. This happens a couple of times, but it doesn't happen a lot, so don't worry about that too much. And then when we head over to the constructors, if neither driver reaches Q2, it's -1 point. One driver reaches Q2, it's 1 point. Both drivers reaching Q2, it's 3 points. One driver reaches Q3, it's 5 points. Both drivers reaching Q3 is 10 points. So again, very similar to the way we had it before. It's where the sprint comes in that we had that change to -10 from the DNFs. but everything else stays the same. Fastest lap is still 5 points, positions gained is 1 point, positions lost is -1, and overtakes made is 1 point. Again, it's just following the actual sprint results. Yet in normal F1, where 8th to 1st get points, 8th gets 1 point, 1st gets 8 points. And with constructors, when it comes to races especially, they just make the combined total of each driver's points total. So let's say you had Mercedes in a sprint race. Let's say Russell got 11 points, he won the race, got a position gain, got 2 overtakes, something like that, and Antonelli got 6 points. You would end up with Mercedes bringing you 17 points overall for the sprint. Also with the sprints, we don't get any points for sprint quali, and normally the deadline is for the sprint race. I don't think that's changed heading into 2026, so we don't have to worry about setting our teams before the sprint quali, and that is also a little bit of a glimpse into helping on our sprint race weekends of what teams we should be picking. Then heading into the race where everything is the big points, positions gained, positions lost, overtake made, they all work the same as they did in the sprint. However, this time round, fastest lap is 10 points and driver of the day is 10 points as well. However, this tally that the driver gets for driver of the day does not go to the constructor on the tally that takes their combined points. So if, again, let's use Mercedes. If Russell got 35 points with driver of the day, so that was an extra, so you got 25 points without it, and Antonelli got 17 points, Mercedes would get 42 points, not 52 points. I have my own issues with fastest lap and driver of the day, especially driver of the day. It's way too many points for F1 Fantasy overall because of what B tier assets get, but this video isn't about that, so don't worry, I won't bore you about all of that for now. And then in the race results, it's the exact same format as a normal F1 race would have, with first place getting 25 points, all the way down to 10th getting 1 point, and 11th to 20th getting none. Again, the DNFs stay at -20, a little bit weird because now there's 22 drivers on the grid. I thought they were going to change to that or reduce it, but they haven't. A little bit lazy from F1 Fantasy, but it stays the same since 2025. And this counts for all DNFs as well, so even if it's mechanical, not their issue, everything, DNF, disqualification, not classified, will be a -20 points. And then finally, on points scored over a race weekend, we also have the pit stop times, which only affect the constructor. You don't get points for the driver, whoever gets the pit stop. It's all about the actual constructor who gets it. And pit stop times this time round, again, similar to 2025, it's all about how quick the pit stop actually is, and it only works the point scoring for the constructor. So if you get over 3 seconds at your fastest pit stop, you get 0 points. 2.5 to 2.99, you get 2 points. 2.2 to 2.49, you get an extra 5 points. 2.0 at 2.19, 10 points. Under 2.0, 20 points. And the fastest pit stop overall on a race will also get an extra 5 points. And then finally, for the rules of F1 Fantasy, team management. Now, we normally, in Australia, it's unlimited because it's the first race of the season. But normally, we get 2 free transfers heading into each race weekend. And if you keep a transfer for the next race, it moves up to 3 free transfers. Again, with this, nothing much has changed. That system has been around since 2025. But also, again, team management, exceeding free transfers allowance. If you have 3 transfers made to your team and you only have 2 free transfers, you'll take -10 for every single transfer after this point, which I don't have an issue with. It's understandable because 10 points in F1 Fantasy isn't actually that much, but it's also enough of a deterrent to be like, ooh, I shouldn't be moving my B tier transfers around just to be able to then take a -10 because then you're negating all the points you could get. But those are all the rules for F1 Fantasy in 2026. Let's now talk about the chips. So let's start off with wildcard. If you head over to your team selections and you notice that, oh, you can use a chip icon at the bottom of your teams, you'll notice you have 6 chips available to you. You have wildcard, limitless, times 3 points, no negative, final fix, and autopilot. And I'm going to go through all of them and just quickly give you a review of what all of them do. If you actually need help on when to use them, I've already made a chip summary for 2026. Nothing's changed heading in from 2025 to 2026, so that video is valid even though the game hadn't released yet. The name of times 3 points was slightly different, but it's still where I would want to use it. But starting off with wildcard, wildcard gives you the opportunity to change your entire team without incurring any negative transfers you would normally get by going over the 2 to 3 transfer limit, depending on how many transfers you had saved. This includes both drivers and constructors and stays with you after the race weekend has finished. These changes cannot exceed your cost cap limit, and it can only be used once per season. Then heading into the limitless, it is unlimited transfers for both drivers and constructors with no cost cap limit. Now, it lasts one race weekend long, and your team will revert back to your previous race weekend's team, so any transfers you made in the same weekend you use Limitless will not count. E.g., if you used it in China, the team you would then have going into Japan would be the team you had picked for Australia. Your team also reverts back to the basic 2 transfers, even if you carried over the transfer from last race. Again, this can only be used once. All chips can only be used once per season. Then into times 3. Every race weekend, you have the choice to place 2 times points on a driver, but with this chip, you now get an extra 3 times points to use on a driver on top of the remaining 2 times you get as well. Only works on driver assets though, not constructors, and again, can only be used once. Then heading into autopilot, it allows you to move your 2 times option to the switch to the best scoring driver. Again, not constructor. In a race weekend, whether or not you actually put the 2 times on them, it will do that automatically after the race has finished. Then heading into no negative, any negative points you gain throughout the race weekend will not count when this chip is selected, whether it be from positions lost, DNF, etc. You will take none of these hits, only positive points. Very, very useful for wet races, potentially like Australia coming up. And then finally, you also have Final Fix. Final Fix will allow you to make 1 extra transfer in your team after the deadline has finished, so after the quali or the sprint race, and it can only be used on drivers, not constructors. Again, it only works for 1 race weekend, and it will revert back to your original driver selection before the Final Fix was used after the points have been tallied. And let's say you changed your Final Fix on your 2 times driver, you can't then change your 2 times option to someone else. If you Final Fix that 2 times driver, it will then automatically put your 2 times onto the driver you transferred in. So those are all of the chips for everyone out there who needed to know how to play F1 Fantasy. Now let's actually talk about the price change algorithm, because coming into 2026, it looks like it's going to be the same. And F1 Fantasy is pretty, just not transparent about this stuff. But if it's the exact same as 2025, which we believe it will be, this is what we'll be looking at heading into the first 3 race weekends. It is a 3 race average point system. Every race is weighted the exact same. It will take 100% of your points from each race 1, 2, and 3 of that system. A-tier drivers go up and down, minus or plus 0.1 and 0.3 million. Last year it was 18.5 million. This bracket, I'm assuming it will be the same this season, although we'll have to find out if Hajar goes over that limit to see if that actually happens. And B-tier drivers can go up or down plus 0.2 million or 0.6 million at the same time. So this is how the average points per million threshold actually works in the game. And if it all looks a little bit confusing, don't worry, because I have an example down below, which I actually used in one of my other videos. But take, for instance, Alonso Abu Dhabi 2025. All they do is race 1, 2, and 3, divided by the driver value, and then divided by 3 again, which for his instance would be 12 plus 17 minus 12, divided by 4.7, divided by 3 equals 1.2, which would be over the 1.2 threshold to go up 0.6 million. But don't worry if all of this is very, very difficult to understand. It took a lot of us a while to understand this in 2025, and also F1 Fantasy Tools will be your best friend, because F1 Fantasy Tools is under maintenance going through the 2026 changes, but they have a budget building tab which actually lets us see all of the numbers that we need to know if you do not know how the calculations work. So don't worry, they'll have you completely checked out if you want to use them. I use them as well heading into 2026. But now with this all done, now let's head over to the really fun part of this video, where I'm going to do my first ZACHGP's do's and don'ts of the F1 Fantasy season. I'm going to go through every single driver and constructor and tell you if they are priced at a good value or a bad value, and if we should be looking at using them for our teams for the 2026 Australian Grand Prix. Now, starting off with Max Verstappen at 27.7 million. I'm not too fond of Max Verstappen right now, just because it's a little bit of an unknown where Red Bull will sit. I think 27.7 million is fair, but there's better options elsewhere. So he's very much middle ground right now. Wouldn't bring him in, but he's not terrible. Then over to George Russell, potentially everyone's favourite for the Drivers' Championship. Again, he's quite pricey, but if Mercedes is that fast, I could see 27.4 million being a very worthwhile option for him. Then we head over to Lando Norris, 27.2 million. I think for now, before actual practice 1, 2, and 3 happens, it might change over the weekend, McLaren are slightly overvalued in F1 Fantasy. So I wouldn't go near Lando Norris, and I wouldn't really go near Oscar Piastri as well, unless you can fit him into your team, which, surprise, surprise, we actually might be able to. So Oscar Piastri, I'm just going to put in the middle ground because he's slightly cheaper than Lando Norris. Then Kimi Antonelli, he is looking like a very good priced asset right now. If you can afford to bring him in, I would. And then the same goes for actually both Leclerc and Hamilton at 22.8 million and 22.5 million. Ferrari look extremely undervalued right now. They look like good assets for your 180-year driver or 280-year drivers that you can bring into your team for the start of the season. Isaac Hadjar at 15.1 million. He's actually priced very good. However, because we don't know what Red Bull's going to be like and we know what that second seat could be like, I'm going to say he's a bad asset for now. You shouldn't go near him. Pierre Gasly, again, I'm going to say a bad asset at 12 million for now. Just slightly too expensive. I think you could be using your money a little bit better off than going that extra 5-6 million that he is compared to some other assets in the B tier range. Again, Sainz and Albon, I think is the complete exact same thing with Williams. Very, very overvalued. I wouldn't go near them. They are bad. Fernando Alonso and Stroll, again, completely overvalued for where Aston Martin are right now. Don't go near them. Then heading into the first B tier assets that I would actually say are classified as good assets heading into Australia, and we have Behrman and Ocon, the Haas duo. If you can afford to bring in both Behrman and Ocon, I would 100% agree to do this. I think they are steals at 7.4 million and 7.3 million. Be prepared to see a lot of those duo on everyone's team. Nico Hülkenberg, I also think is a good pick at 6.8 million. Not my favourite because of how closely priced they are to Haas. But if you're running out of money and Audi are the only option, I like Nico Hülkenberg. Same with actually Lawson, Bortoletto and Lindblad. I like all of these assets all the way from Behrman down to Lindblad. If any of you had any of these selection of B tier drivers in your teams, I would say that is a pretty good starting point for Australia. Colapinto, I would also say good, but again, we know how DNF heavy he can be, so just be very careful of him. Again, Sergio Perez, I'm just going to say, if you're really struggling for money, middle ground wise, but again, he wouldn't be my favourite just because we don't know where Cadillac are going to be. However, Bottas is a very, very good asset. He is one of the best because he's got 5 place grid penalty, so he's going to be right at the back, which is good for F1 Fantasy because you can't get any negative points if you're starting at the back unless you DNF. And Cadillac, I know I just said Cadillac, we don't really know where they're going to be, but they look just about good enough that we can use them and be okay that they're probably not going to have a DNF. But for me, my favourite B tier drivers right now are probably Bottas, Lawson, Ocon, Behrman, and Bortoletto and Hülkenberg. Then heading into the A tier drivers, I think for me, my favourite right now are Piastri, Antonelli, Leclerc, and if you can squeeze him in, George Russell. Then heading to the constructors, again, 29.3 million for Mercedes. I think it's pricey, but I think that is just about right. I don't think we're going to be going for Mercedes as a constructor right now, but if you're going for Ferrari and Mercedes builds, they are good, but for me, they're middle ground just because they're very, very expensive. McLaren, don't go near unless anything changes in the practice sessions, again, overvalued. Red Bull, again, completely overvalued at 28.2 million, don't go near them. Ferrari, completely opposite, completely undervalued. They are very much looking like great value assets right now. I would 100% have Ferrari in my team if you guys could. Alpine, I think slightly overvalued. They're a little bit of a differential, but I don't think Alpine had a way to go at 12.5 million, slightly too expensive. Williams, completely steer clear of. Same goes for Aston Martin. Haas at 7.4 million, an absolute steal. If you're going for a budget building option with Haas as a B tier constructor, I would go for Haas. Audi, again, they're cheap, but constructor-wise, we want to be looking at these big teams or the teams that look like they're fighting for 5th in the constructors if you're going for a B-tier constructor, or the top of the top, like Mercedes or Ferrari. So I'd say Audi, Racing Bulls, and Cadillac, I wouldn't go near, because if you went for a B-tier constructor, it would definitely be Haas, maybe Alpine if you had the money. But with that being said, what do I think are some teams that you should be bringing into F1 Fantasy? Well, my initial thoughts before we actually make a big whole video about it, going in from my first initial thoughts from the release date, never mind the third team, that's my trying to get the least amount of points team. I'll be making a league for that as well. If we head over to my first team, Team 1, I think this is the perfect team to start up if everyone's looking at budget building like we did in 2025. Leclerc is the 2 times with Kimi Antonelli. They're quite interchangeable with the 2 times with both the Haas drivers, potentially with that increased boost at the start with those Ferrari engines. Bottas with the 5 place grid penalty leaves us with 2.7 million to move about if we have made a mistake in Australia. And Ferrari and Haas, both looking very, very strong right now. This team very much looks like the leading foundation of what your team should look like. But different alternatives to this is you could actually bring in George Russell over Kimi Antonelli, and if you think he could be the 2 times boost, you could actually put it on him. Now your B tier drivers would drop and they become a little bit more risky, as I'm not too fond of Colapinto just because of how DNF heavy he is. Same with Lawson, a little bit skeptical about him, but if it allows you to get the best of the best, potentially this is where we could look as well. And if McLaren actually looked pretty good heading into Australia and we got it all wrong, if you still want to build your team around Ferrari and Haas after the initial thoughts of testing and all of this before we get to practice, you could also bring in Piastri as well, because we have enough money to go over to from Antonelli to Piastri. So those are the 3 teams I would consider if you're looking for a Ferrari Haas build. But if you're going for a points heavy team on the 2 A-tier constructors, not focusing on the budget building, which I probably wouldn't recommend right now because budget building is so key in F1 Fantasy, even with the pricing being a little bit scuffed, is you could have Leclerc as the 2 times, Perez, Lindblad, Bottas and Colapinto. Again, a little bit slightly more DNF heavy potentially, which is why I'm a little bit less fond of it as well. And you're probably going to go up less in budget increases every race weekend for the first couple of races. But Mercedes and Ferrari are a very good foundation to work on, and you can move around the B-tier drivers a little bit. However, this is pretty much how the team would work. You could also get rid of Leclerc and go over to Hamilton, but that is pretty much the gist of both of the 2 teams we've kind of been looking at right now heading into F1 Fantasy for 2026. So thank you all so much for watching this video. This has been everything that you need to know for F1 Fantasy heading into 2026. Again, I'm going to be putting up my schedule again that I showed at the start of the video. I'm going to be doing tips and tricks for F1 Fantasy heading into Australia. I'm going to be doing the best team selections after I've done a proper look at what we can build up, and I'll be showing all of you all out there what exactly we could build. If you want to join the ZACHGP League, don't forget to do that, because we've already got 15 teams in and I haven't even put out a video yet. That's all just from 1 tweet. We're going to have over 1,000 potentially in this league. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. So as per usual, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'm going to be your #1 F1 Fantasy YouTuber for any help you need for this upcoming season. See you all very soon and take care.